All right, so I mentioned on social media how when I ship my pottery, I almost never get insurance. And I haven't had anything break in like 10 years, 12 years, something like that. So I had a few people ask me how I ship stuff, so I figured I'd give a short little tutorial. Probably give a little bit of a longer one on Vimeo that's got, a little bit more production quality, but I just wanted to do one really fast. So just to give you an idea of my setup, I'm just gonna pan the camera over a little bit. And over here, I've got, a big roll of bubble wrap. And then underneath it, I've got just a bunch of tissue paper that I use just so that the, the packaging just looks a little nicer on the way in. So I'm just gonna be wrapping something simple, just a, small little whiskey sipper. Going to be folding my tissue paper in half, put the piece on it, wrap it up in there. Grab some of my bubble wrap. I always get the perforated bubble wrap, and part of the reason that I like doing that is because when I'm shipping my items, I just try to ship them in exactly the same way that I would every other time I ship that item. So with like a whiskey sipper or a coffee mug or anything around that size, I just, have 3 perforated sections together. I fold them in half, and then I just roll the piece up in it. So when you're wrapping your piece with the bubble wrap, you want to make sure everything is as tight as possible. So I'm going to fold the bubble wrap inside my mug, fill up that gap. On the other end, I can't shove it into the foot, so I'm just going to fold it over. And technically just the small amount of taping that I've done is adequate, but again, I just try to make it so that everything is super compact, super secure. So I'm just gonna wrap some more tape around it. All right, so now even if a little corner of this somehow gets ripped, there's enough tape around it where it's not gonna come apart. And already, it's pretty good. It bounces pretty well. So the next thing I'm gonna do, I've got my box. I'll do 1 strip of tape down the middle and then another 2 on either side of it. One's a little bit more to the left, one's a little bit more to the right, but they're both going to overlap this seam line. And then I'll also do a section on either end going the other way. And so now you can see I've got, tape going along the seam line, but also tape going along, this top and bottom seam line. If I've got a really big box, like I'm shipping out quite a few items and the weight is a little more, I might layer this tape, for, with 1 extra layer or 2 extra layers, depending on how heavy the packaging is. But you just want to make sure that there's no way that it can come apart here. So you want to make sure that all those joints are just completely taped. So one of the reasons that I like using bubble wrap instead of something like peanuts is peanuts have a tendency to settle. Like as the piece gets jostled around, you know, your piece that's sitting in there is probably going to slowly sink to the bottom, and those peanuts are going to float to the top. So one of the reasons I like using bubble wrap is you don't really have to worry about that. That basically just can't happen. And so what I'm going to do is I've got, you know, some of my bubble wrap sort of folded over itself. And essentially I'm going to be able to shove this in, and it basically creates like a little blanket with my piece inside. So I don't have to worry about my bubble wrap settling in any sort of way because it's just around the piece. No amount of jostling or, you know, changing the direction that the weight is going to make it so that the bubble wrap, you know, gets moved over and that piece settles into some sort of area that's more exposed. All right. And I'm just going to take a little bit more bubble wrap. And what I really want to do is, again, you want to make it so that this thing can get moved and thrown and tossed, and it's just so compact that nothing inside there is ever going to move. And so you'll see that I'm, you know, kind of trying to stuff this packaging in there. I want to make it so that, you know, it's almost like it's about to burst at the seams. All right, that seems pretty good. So now I'm just going to grab a couple of my business cards, the client's receipt. And so when you're putting the top flaps over, if you're not struggling at least a little bit to get the box to close, you're basically doing it wrong. So I've got one piece of tape over it. You can see that this side is kind of pressing out a little bit this way, and this side's pressing down a little bit this way. So I'm going to take some tape and tuck that in. And just so you can clearly see the difference. Now that side, you know, the corners just line up perfectly. This side, you can still see it poking up. And so we're going to get that all tucked in. And so now, you know, the top and the bottom are kind of pushing out a little bit. Not sure how well you can see that it's kind of like pushing up here in the middle. It's also pushing up a little bit here. And basically, you know, it's going to be pushing up a little bit, but from it getting shipped and it getting moved, you know, that Amazon delivery guy or UPS driver may just be tossing this around. You know, some of the bubbles are going to pop. In general, it's just going to get a little bit more compact in shipping. And you want to make it so that there's that, you know, extra amount of stuffing so that it can get crunched a little bit and still be, you know, fully packed, so to speak. And now I've got my shipping label on it. Not worried about it dropping or anything. You know, it's packed. So not 100% sure I articulated everything right, but I think you guys get the general idea. And if you guys like this sort of thing, I'll probably try to do another one that's just a little bit more thought out with, you know, some different camera shots and stuff like I normally do for my Vimeo tutorials. But if you have any questions, let me know. And hopefully you don't have anything break when you ship it.